This is Erin Peliquin from MCP Actions. Today I'm going to show you how to use MCP's 4 Seasons package of action sets for Photoshop Elements. This video is being recorded in Photoshop Elements 10. Everything that you see in it will be applicable to Elements 5 through 10. I will also show you how to access the actions in versions of Elements after 10 as well. 4 Seasons comes with 4 separate action sets, one for each season of the year. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter are the sets. You can purchase each set individually, or you can purchase them all together as a package. Each set that you purchase also comes with a set called MCP Season Extras. That is a bonus set added on to each of the individual seasons. Your first step in using these actions is going to be to install them into Photoshop Elements. Please read through the written instructions that come in your download for help with this. We also have videos on our website for how to install actions into all the various versions of Elements. Once you've installed them into Elements 5 through 10, you will look at your Effects panel. If your effects panel is not visible, go to the Window menu and put a check mark next to the word Effects. You'll want to start by making sure in the effects panel that the Photo Effects button is selected, and then in the drop-down menu you can look for the set or sets that you purchased. So you will have some or all of the following: MCP Autumn 4 Seasons, MCP Spring 4 Seasons, MCP Summer 4 Seasons, and MCP Winter 4 Seasons. Each one of those will be accompanied by MCP Extras 4 Seasons. Please note that if you buy multiple sets, you should only install the extras once. So to demonstrate how these actions work, I am going to edit this photograph by Andy Tate of Crave My Photography. I'm going to start with our spring set, so I will first navigate to the spring section. And you can see that I've got various colored thumbnails here. Now first off, I'm going to make the thumbnails bigger so they're easier for us to read. I'll do that by going to my Properties menu here on the Effects panel and selecting Large Thumbnail View. Each one of our seasonal action sets has a base to run. So for the spring set, we've got the Spring Splendor base. After that, it's got a series of looks to apply on top of the base. So you can see that for spring, the base is indicated by the word base, and then the thumbnails look the same for all the looks that go on top. After that, and this again applies to all the 4 season sets, you'll have 2 mix and match actions that have a different thumbnail color. So in this case, the Spring Synthesis mix and match is pink. We have a light version and a standard version for the strength that those actions run at. And then finally, we'll have a set of finishing actions unique to each season. So for spring, the finishing actions are in green. I'm going to start my edit of this photo by running the spring base. So I'll simply double click on it and then watch the layers as they are built down here in the Layers panel. After the action finishes processing, you'll see that you have a big stack of new layers. The bottom one in this action set is Spring Splendor. I'll turn that off and back on to show you the effect on the photo. Spring Splendor and the layers above it that have the arrows pointing down towards Spring Splendor are called a clipping group. That means that the bottom layer, Spring Splendor in this case, controls all the layers above it. So if I wanted to adjust the overall strength of the action, I could click on Spring Splendor and adjust the opacity. This would reduce the opacity of all the layers above it. I could also use this layer mask to exclude the effects of the action from a particular part of the image. If I only wanted to adjust individual actions, I could do that as well by, for instance, clicking on one layer, turning it off or on, adjusting the opacity or the layer mask. You can also see that the action builds 2 layers at the very top, need more sunlight and need less sunlight. So if So if your image needs to be darker, for instance, you could turn on need less sunlight and then adjust the opacity if necessary. Now, if you started your edit in Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom, you might not need to start with this base action. You might want to go directly towards applying the looks. However, you are certainly welcome to try the base, and sometimes it does add a nice effect. So I'm happy now with what the base has done for this image. I'm going to go ahead and apply a couple of looks. I'm going to start with the Vintage Postcards. Now that Vintage Postcards is run, you can see that it's built an additional set of new layers for me up at the top, which are controlled by a clipping mask as well. So I could reduce or increase the strength of Vintage Postcards just by using the bottom layer of this clipping mask. It's called Adjust Vintage Postcards. Next, I am going to add the antique look to combine the two. I'm just kind of experimenting with these looks to see which ones will look the best in combination on this photo. So again, just to sum up, I have run the spring base and then Vintage Postcards, and now I'm running the antique look. And you can see now that it's added yet another new series of layers on top of my layer stack. I think I like this, but I am going to reduce the opacity to the 20s. And I love what this is doing for the photo. Now I'm going to scroll down in our group of actions and run directional sunlight. So I simply double click on it and it will build yet another set of actions, and I will turn on the direction that I want the sunlight to come from in my image. So looking at this image, I think that it makes sense to turn on the sunlight coming from the top right corner. And so I'll stop to read the message. It says to turn on the eyeball for the direction that you want the sunlight to come from. When you get messages like this in Elements, always hit continue. If you hit stop, it will undo what the action has just done. And so by hovering my cursor over this first layer, I can see that this is the one that adds sunlight from the right corner. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on and watch as the photo is lit starting from the right corner and going in. Now the spring actions do add a hazy look. Sometimes it's nice to add a little bit of extra contrast to them if you like that. If you like the hazy look, this is a great place to stop. However, I am going to go into the MCP extras for the 4-season set, and I'm going to run hemispheres, which adds extra contrast to the image. And so let me turn this action off. There's before contrast, and back on so that you can see how it affected the photo. I think that this is just perfect. I love the look right now, and I am finished editing it. So if I liked this look for this photo, I would go ahead and save it as a PSD to maintain all these layers. But so that I can demonstrate some of the other actions to you, I'm going to go ahead and undo what I've done. And now I'm going to use the summer action set. So for this one, rather than running a base and a couple of looks, I'm going to go straight to the summer blend, which is the mix and match for summer. So you can see that with all 4 of our seasonal sets, with the mix and matches, we've got a light version, which applies the looks at 20% opacity, and a standard version, which applies the looks at the same opacity that they're applied up here. So that's about 50%. For this image, I'm going to go ahead and use the light version. So I simply double click on it, and it will apply the base action and then apply all the looks on top of it. The base action will be at its default opacity, and the looks will be, as I said, at 20% opacity. However, they will all be turned off. That will allow me to turn them on to see what they look like and to combine them easily. Using these mix and matches is a great way to learn what the individual looks look like. So when you've run this action, you'll see that at the bottom of your layer stack, you now have your Adjust Summer base with all the layers above it that contribute to it. Above those layers, you'll have your Need More and Need Less Sunlight layers if you need to adjust your exposure. And then finally, you'll have these folders with these summer looks that you can apply. Now in Elements, you cannot open these folders to adjust the underlying layers. If you need to adjust the underlying layers that are inside the group, you would run the individual looks instead. Now for this action, I like what the summer base has done to add some pop and contrast to the image. I'm going to go ahead and turn on, I think, Sunflower Fields. I like that warm look it's added, and then I'm going to turn on Putting Green. And that's a great look for this photo as well. I like the two combined. Now, I think I want to add a little depth to the colors of the image, so I am going to run Summer Burn, which will allow me to paint on a deep color pop to the image. So once this action has finished running, I will hit continue through the message, and you can see that the layer mask is black. That means that the effect is not visible anywhere until I select the paintbrush with white as my foreground color and paint on the effect. So I'm just going to paint on really quickly. If you were doing this and not recording a video, you would do it a bit more slowly. So I am just going to paint in this deep color pop to the background. I'm going to make sure and get close to the subject without spilling the color over. If I did overspill my painting, I would simply turn my paintbrush to black and paint over the areas where I shouldn't have painted. So again, as I was saying, if you were doing this and taking your time, you would definitely pay more attention to detail than I'm doing right here. You just want to make sure to avoid skin colors with this particular action. And finally, I'm going to return to the extras set and run hemispheres one more time, just to add a little bit of extra contrast to this image. And I think that's just lovely. I think that this really did need that extra pop of contrast. So let me show you a before and after on this edit. We started here and we finished here. I really like that look. Now I am going to leave this file open, going to duplicate the background layer into a new file by right-clicking on the background layer and creating a new file with it. And then that way I can run the autumn set of actions on the same image. And again, I'm going to go to the Autumn Brew Mix and Match, and I'm going to run the standard strength on this one. Now, after the Autumn Brew has finished running, again, you'll see you've got your background layer with the Autumn Equinox base above it. On top of the base layers is the Need More Sunlight or Need Less Sunlight section. And then finally, you've got the various looks. Now, these mix and match actions are adding a lot of layers. So don't be concerned if it takes a minute or two to run on your system, especially depending on whether you've got any other high intensity software running. For this look, I think I am going to turn on Japanese Maple. And I think Warm Cider will look great with it too. And I love that. To add some additional jewel tones and really kind of bring out what's in the image already, I'm going to run the Burnt Firewood action. And just like the summer set, this will give me a black layer mask where I need to paint on the effect in the image. So I've got my big white brush selected and I'm just going to paint in the jewel tones. Really add a taste of fall to this image, the warmer colors. And one more time, I won't be painting precisely, but I am trying to avoid skin tones. If I were really editing this photo, I would be more careful about avoiding the skin and being a bit neater with my brush strokes. I love what this layer does to the dress that she's wearing. I think next I want to add a vignette, so I'm going to pop on the dark cherry vignette, and you can see that it will darken the edges up. And finally, I think I want to add the Autumn Light directional glow to this image as well. So just like we saw in the spring, this will add light coming from any of the four corners or the left or right sides. So for this one, I still want the light to be coming from the top right corner, so I will simply turn on this layer and reveal the very subtle lightning effect that comes from the top right corner. Next, I want to demonstrate the winter set of actions for you. If you're using elements 5 through 10, you would just simply navigate to your winter set, if that's one of the ones that you purchased, and run the actions from here. I'm going to show you how these actions work in Elements 11, however, because that is a bit different. Before I move over to Elements 11, I just want to show you the difference between the summer version of this edit and the autumn version. Two different looks, but both very beautiful. So now moving over to Elements 11, I've got the same image open. To view the actions that you have installed in Elements 11, again, we do have videos available for how to install them, and there are written instructions in your actions download. I'm going to go down here to the More button at the bottom right corner and look for my Actions panel. If you don't see that in your More panel, you would want to go to the Window menu and select Actions. You can see that I've got my action sets installed. In Elements 11, they look like folders. You click on the folder to open it, and then you can see that the actions are listed out without thumbnails. So you've got Winter Whirlwind, which is your base. You've got your looks. You've got your 2 mix and matches, and then your finishing effects. So for this one, I'm going to start with the base. I'm going to click on it to highlight and then press the play button. And you can watch as the layers are built. Now this winter base is a bit more complex. This is a black and white look, and it's going to have the clipping mask just like we've seen in the other actions that we've run so far. You can see that the clipping mask is right here, adjust the winter whirlwind. However, under the clipping mask we've got a couple of extra layers. One is the black and white look. You can turn it off if you prefer a color look with the winter effects. Or you can turn it on and reduce the opacity to create a vintage look, something like that. So I am going to keep the opacity at 100 for this one. We've also got the details layer above the black and white look. This details really emphasizes the details that are found in the shadows and highlights of your image. And just like the other layers, you can turn it off or turn it on for a more detailed look. So that's the basic of the black and white, and just like the other seasonal bases, you do have the need more and need less sunlight layers at the top. Now for the looks, I think on this one that I am going to start with champagne. So I'll simply click on it and press the play button, and I'll watch it create the champagne layers, which will be moved to the top of my layer stack. So that warms up the image. And then I think I will add peach cobbler. And I love what this has done for the black and white. If I wanted to turn off the black and white and just have these tones and these effects with a color image, again, I would just go right down here to the winter black and white layer and turn it off to get something like that. Very cold looking. That really does remind me of kind of the faded colors of winter. I'm going to turn this one back on, however. So these are the edits that you can create with MCP's 4 seasons for Photoshop Elements. Thanks so much for watching, and enjoy your action sets.